Developing news with the war in Russia and Ukraine, as we're hearing that Russia has put the United States on notice that they are nowhere near peace. And this coming as we're also hearing that there is a nuclear leak at Chernobyl. Let's go and take a look at the latest headlines coming out so you can see it for yourself. Russia hits Ukraine with missile and drone attack. As Zelensky notes, substantive call with the United States officials. The two sides also noted that the real progress toward any agreement ultimately will depend on Russia's readiness to show serious commitment to long-term peace, which we're hearing currently is not the case. In addition to that, as I mentioned, Chernobyl is unable to stop a radiation leak after Russian drone strike. UN watchdog warns the strike pierced the power plant's outer shell, but radiation levels have not increased in the area, but they're saying they are not able to contain it. You can see this article coming out today, Monday, December 8th, 2025. So new developments, a lot of video footage coming out. I'm going to be sharing with you the latest so that way you can see what is going on. And let me know your thoughts. Do you think that we are going to be seeing more war as we progress into 2026? I had a lot of people, I asked the question, do you think we're going to be having more earthquakes? They said yes, and they were right. As yesterday, we had a report coming out that there was that 7.0 in Alaska. I believe that was the day before yesterday, Saturday. And then today, 7.6 in Japan. And tsunamis were hitting Japan's coast. Now, we had heard warnings of up to 10-foot waves. If you missed that live stream earlier today, check it out. I reported to you as soon as it come out. And then today, we're also hearing that they are trying to get some sort of peace talk between Russia and Ukraine. But at this time, Russia is putting us on notice that there is no deal on the table. Now, I'm going to share with you the latest coming out from Donald Trump, from Zelensky, what's being reported so you can see it for yourself. And like I said, as more comes out, I'll be sure to report it here on the channel so you know exactly what is going on. That alongside the promise of potential $2,000 tariff dividend checks, Trump doubling down today as we're hearing that he is going to be setting aside $12 billion from tariff funds to go out to farmers. We're also hearing that those checks are going to be coming out sometime mid to late 2026 as well. Let me know your thoughts. Are you glad the way that Trump is handling everything? If you appreciate it, drop a 47 in the comments. If you think no, put no. Let me know your thoughts down below. But let me go ahead and get you caught up on the latest that's going on with Russia, Ukraine, the United States, everything coming out today, December 8th, 2025. I'm going to cite the sources, put it on the screen. They're all going to be hyperlinked down below. If you appreciate that, do me a favor. Before we dive in, I see we've got 1,100 people on with me live. If we could get half the room to hit the like button, that's about 600 people. If you don't see it at 600 and you haven't hit like, please do so. Just takes a second. And to stay up to date, it's totally free. Why not go ahead and hit that subscribe button? And also, if you could do me a favor, just share these videos out. I think notifications aren't working on YouTube. People have been letting me know they're not getting the notifications. If you could just share it out, that probably would help out a ton as well. But with that being said, you guys, let's go ahead and get you caught up on the latest so you can see it for yourself. I've got a lot of video footage. We're just going to let it roll so you can get the updates as to what is going on right now. Let's go ahead and take a look at the latest.
Russia unleashing yet another massive attack on Ukraine's infrastructure, hitting a railway hub in Kremenchuk in central Ukraine, causing power and water outages just 24 hours after this train station was struck just outside of Kyiv. Russia very much ramping up attempts to cripple the country's transport links and energy supply too. The bombardment continuing as 3 days of peace talks wrap up between the U.S. and Ukraine in Miami, as you said, after talks in Moscow failed to yield any kind of meaningful breakthrough, with key issues remaining over territory and security guarantees for Ukraine. Now, we heard from President Zelensky saying that he had a phone call with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, saying they had a constructive call covering many aspects to end the bloodshed and how to eliminate the risk of Russia failing on its promises again. Zelensky saying the parties agreed on next steps without giving any real details of what those actually were. Now, next, Zelensky will travel to the UK for talks with European leaders in London. Ahead of those talks, French President Emmanuel Macron, he said we must continue to exert pressure on Russia to compel it to choose peace. Gio.
We will be watching those meetings. Britt Clennett, thank you so much for your...
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with European leaders today in a show of support for Ukraine as Russia continues its bombardment and as the White House appears to be pressing Ukraine to sign a peace deal that would include significant concessions. Here's President Trump last night speaking to reporters on the red carpet before the Kennedy Center honors.
I have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed that President Zelensky hasn't yet read the proposal. That was as of a few hours ago. His people love it, but he hasn't. Russia's fine with it. Russia, I guess, would rather have the whole country when you think of it. But Russia is, I believe, fine with it, but I'm not sure that Zelensky's fine with it.
Now, despite what the president said there, Russia has not agreed to a peace deal. President Zelensky said today that Ukraine is working on a 20-point peace plan with EU leaders and that he hopes to share it with the U.S. by tomorrow.
A lot of what we have to discuss, to speak about certain things which are very important for today. I think unity between Europe and Ukraine, and also unity between Europe, Ukraine, and the United States. There are some things which we can't manage without Americans, things which we can't manage without Europe, and that's why we need to make some important decisions.
I'm skeptical about some of the details which we are seeing in the documents coming from U.S. side, but we have to talk about that.
Ahead of today's meetings in London, NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons sat down with European Commissioner Vice President Kaja Kallas. Keir?
Well, as President Zelensky prepared to meet with European leaders in London today, some of his key allies, President Trump posted that Ukrainian negotiators, quote, love his peace plan. Now, that may be an example of positive thinking designed to push the peace talks along, because it came after President Trump's own son, speaking in Doha, in the region where I am now, said his dad could abandon Ukraine. And of course, last week, President Putin doubled down on his demands in an interview reported by Russian state media, saying his military will take more territory, the whole of Donbass, he said, by military or other means. In other words, give us what we want, or we'll just take it by force. Ahead of today's latest European summit, I sat down with the European Commission's Vice President responsible for foreign affairs, and I asked her about the Trump administration's Russia negotiations. Can Europe trust the Trump administration to negotiate with Russia?
Can we trust Russia? It's the biggest question, because that is the main problem. I mean, if you look at the overall picture, putting the pressure on Ukraine to give in is, of course, easy way, but it doesn't give you sustainable peace, because if we look 100 years back, then Russia has attacked 19 different countries, some as many as 3 or 4 times. So, the problem is clearly Russia doing that over again. So if Ukraine receives security guarantees, they are out of the danger, but then somebody else is in danger. I mean, we have Central Asian countries that have border more than 7,600 kilometers. They have critical raw materials. I mean, if aggression pays off somewhere, then it serves as an invitation to use it elsewhere. That is my point. And that's why we have been also signaling that, in order to have peace and sustainable peace that lasts, we need to get concessions from the Russian side, that they will not do this again. I mean, putting the pressure on the victim is easy way, but not the right way.
How would you summarize the outcome of the negotiations in Moscow and then the negotiations in Florida, the negotiations that were continuing just at the end of last week?
Well, of course, we welcome any push for peace, but we see very clearly that while Ukraine has agreed to unconditional ceasefire already in February this year, then, Russia is just pretending to negotiate. Every time, it gets tougher, then, they make a face and pretend they negotiate. We need to get to a point where they actually need to negotiate.
Already there is real disquiet in parts of Europe about the Trump administration's new national security strategy published last week. It has some highly critical language about European domestic policies like immigration. I asked the European Commission's Vice President about that. The Trump administration just published its national security strategy. What it has to say about Europe is unprecedented. What was your reaction when you read it?
Well, I read it. I took some positive sides. First, America still considers Europe as the biggest ally, and the other thing is also that we should have more self-confidence regarding Russia, for example. And this is also very true. I mean, we have a lot of economic power and a lot of leverage as well. So we should use it wisely.
Did you agree with it that Europe's biggest problem is internal?
I mean, everybody has internal issues when you are a democracy, and actually those countries who are not democracies also have internal issues, but they don't talk about this.
But should America be telling Europe what to do with its domestic policy?
No, definitely not. Let me be very clear here. I mean, we have our domestic issues. We are dealing with our domestic issues, ourselves. That is very clear. What we are working together with the Americans are, transatlantic issues, but also global security issues. I mean, different parts where we can cooperate together. I mean, the worries that the Americans have when it comes to global drug trafficking, for example, are also the worries we have. But global challenges require global solutions. And there we are willing to work together. But what comes to our internal issues, we handle them ourselves.
There you have it, you guys. Now, let me know your thoughts. That's the European Commission VP. And let me know your thoughts. Should America be supporting Europe and NATO and that alliance there? Do you think so? Should the United States be a part of NATO? If you think so, put yes. If you think no, put no. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And also, if you haven't done so yet, please hit that like button. We're getting close to those 600 likes. That would be awesome while we're live. And we're hearing, though, that Russia is putting us on notice along with all of Europe. And we've actually had this for quite some time. They've been threatening nuclear attacks, World War III. They're saying that we're ready, just to let us know. Russia is saying that they are staying ready, that they don't need to get ready, that they stay ready. They are ready for nuclear attacks and more, that their missiles are aimed at all times. And they've warned us about the dead hand. They said, if you try to hit us, we have things set to automatically detonate, and we will hit Europe, and we could go across to the west as well. So Russia has let us know that they are ready at any time for World War III. However, we will see, because right now a lot of people are mentioning that it seems like they're having a hard time with Ukraine, but we've heard that they have been invading airspaces of other nations for quite some time, and we're going to see what their next move is. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some more video footage here, as this particular video coming out from Fox in the last 24 hours literally says Putin aides put the United States on notice as Russia launches drone attacks on Ukraine. We're hearing a massive attack coming while there's supposed to be peace talks. So Putin, just like Trump had said, one day he's saying, yes, we're going to have peace, sits at the table. Next moment, that same day, launches a massive attack. Let me know. Can Putin be trusted? Yes or no? Let's go ahead and take a look at the video footage.
U.S. and Ukrainian officials wrapping up talks in Miami yesterday as Russia fired more than 600 drones at Ukraine. This comes as Russian President Putin is threatening to take over the Donbass region by force if Ukrainian troops do not withdraw. Stephanie Bennett is live in London with more. Hi, Stephanie.
Hey, Mike, to put things into perspective, President Zelensky released some new numbers. Just this week alone, Russia has launched more than 1,600 attack drones, 1,200 guided aerial bombs, and almost 70 missiles across the country. Now, nightly Russian attacks, they have become a regular routine. Many residents have been cut off from electricity, water, and also light. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, and Ukrainian negotiators said they made progress this week, meeting 3 times in Florida, but said any real progress toward an agreement ultimately will depend on Russia's readiness to show serious commitment to long-term peace. Speaking at the Reagan National Defense Forum, outgoing U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, said efforts to end the war are really close.
You realize the last 10 meters to objective is always your hardest. That's where the friction of war really sets in.
Deal depends on the 2 outstanding issues, including territory, primarily the future of the Donbass region, and also Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, Europe's largest, which is under Russian control. President Putin warned that Russia would take full control of the Donbass by force unless Ukrainian forces withdraw. Zelensky saying he's not giving up any territory and that Putin is just stalling. Despite Witkoff and Kushner spending 5 hours at the Kremlin last Tuesday, Putin's top foreign aide was quoted by Russian media today, saying that the U.S. would have to make serious, radical changes to their papers on Ukraine without disclosing any details. And patience is wearing thin. At an event in Qatar today, Donald Trump Jr. said the U.S. can't keep funding the conflict.
I don't think Ukraine is going to be abandoned, but I think for years, again, it was the same thing as the last answer, which is, well, we want to attack Russia. We want to do this. Well, when it comes to actually writing a check ourselves, no, the U.S. is going to do it. The American public doesn't have an appetite for that.
And President Zelensky will be here in London tomorrow on Monday, meeting with the UK Prime Minister, President of France, and the German Chancellor to discuss things even further. Back to you.
Stephanie Bennett, thanks very much. For more on this, let's bring in Senior Advisor at Rossom and Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council, Melinda Herring. Melinda, welcome.
Great to be with you, Mike. Thank you.
My understanding is you've just returned from 5 days in Kyiv. I'm wondering what your key takeaways were from that visit.
Mike, it is dark and hard. I spent 3 of the last 4 nights in the bomb shelter in Kiev. There are brownouts and blackouts across the country, and there's a shortage of water. In Kiev, though, I would say the mood is one where people are getting ready for Christmas, and they are still pushing ahead. So I got to see Ukraine's first indigenous cruise missile that has just been produced, tested. I also went to a Christmas celebration at the leading children's hospital and gave away 600 packages to children who have cancer and have rare diseases. So in spite of these images that you see, Ukrainians are determined to stay put and live their lives and celebrate the holidays, and they're totally committed to being in their own country.
President Zelensky said after meeting with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff that they had very positive discussions. They agreed to next steps and the formats for continued talks. That sounds quite positive. But what about Vladimir Putin?
It does sound positive, but Mike, you have to dig into the details. So the 2 points of contention and the 2 issues we can't get past are territory and security guarantees. The Ukrainians are not going to give in and stop fighting unless the U.S. provides real security guarantees. That original plan that came out 2 weeks ago with 28-point plan had fake security guarantees. There was no automatic trigger. If there's peace, and there's no promise that if Russia attacks Ukraine, that the U.S. would come and aid Ukraine. Ukraine is not going to stop fighting unless it has real ironclad security guarantees where Congress has signed on the dotted line. They remember 1994 when they gave up their nuclear weapons in exchange for security assurances from the United States, from Russia, and from France. And they're not going to make that same mistake this time. There was also only a 10-year commitment. 10 years is not very much time, and Russia's time horizons are very long. And on the issue of territory, the original plan called on Ukraine to give up territory that it currently holds. And this land is in the Donbass. This is land that Ukraine has defended for 11 years, and it's crucial to the defense of Ukraine. They have heavily fortified cities that are strategically important, and they're not going to give these areas away at all.
I know President Trump, Secretary Rubio, Witkoff, and all of them are giving it their best effort, but is there any evidence that Vladimir Putin is interested in a deal?
Mike, I can't see any. Like I said, I just spent 4 days in Kiev, and I spent a lot of time in the bomb shelters below. And that's the reality on the ground. If President Putin were serious about peace, he would stop hitting hospitals. He would stop hitting schools. He would stop his shelling. We see him increasing his shelling. There's a relentless number of drones and missiles, and they're striking civilian targets. So I see no interest. He hasn't showed any willingness in the discussions to give as well. So as far as one can reasonably determine, Putin is not serious. And now he's threatening. He's saying, if you don't give me what you want, we're going to take the rest of the territory. So now he seems to be throwing another tantrum because he's not getting what he wants at the negotiating table.
Do you have thoughts on a next play by President Trump and his team?
So I think President Trump and First Lady Melania should get huge praise for what they did this weekend. They were involved in the release of 7 Ukrainian children. So Russia has taken more, they've stolen more than 20,000 Ukrainian children. And Melania Trump in particular has been brilliant at making this issue known, and they got those children released. Now, what happens next? I think President Trump is getting frustrated that there's no progress. We got to give President Trump a lot of credit. He's trying to resolve this war. He hates war, and he's doing his very best. He has to increase the pressure on President Trump, or he has to increase the pressure on President Putin now. He has all the cards. He can do this. He can authorize another assistance package in Congress. He can provide more air defense. This is what Ukrainians need right now to get through the winter. He can lessen exports control on all kinds of parts that the Ukrainians need. And importantly, he can tighten sanctions on Russia. He has the ability to do it right now. So President Trump, well done on the release of the children. Let's do some more. There's at least 35,000 more children that are waiting for you and Melania Trump this Christmas season, and they would love to go home to their parents in Ukraine.
Melinda, thank you very much for your analysis today.
Thank you. Pleasure.
There you have it, you guys. Now let's go ahead and take a look at one more with the drone strikes that took place overnight. Let's go ahead and take a look.
Drone strikes on Ukraine after battering the country with drone and missile attacks over the weekend.
Yeah, it comes as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to meet with European leaders today in London for talks on ending the war in Ukraine. Madeline Rivera joins us live in Washington with the details. Good morning, Madeline.
Good morning, Nate and Carly. President Zelensky says Russia has been ramping up its attacks on Ukraine's infrastructure, meaning more power outages during cold winter months. Per the country's Air Force, the most recent incident overnight involved more than 100 Russian drones. As these attacks continue, Ukrainian and American officials press forward with peace negotiations. Their latest meeting in Miami did not yield a resolution, though Zelensky says they agreed on next steps for talks. It appears, though, the president is losing some patience.
I'm a little bit disappointed that President Zelensky hasn't yet read the proposal. That was as of a few hours ago. His people love it, but he hasn't. Russia's fine with it. Russia, I guess, would rather have the whole country when you think of it. But Russia is, I believe, fine with it, but I'm not sure that Zelensky is fine with it. His people love it, but he hasn't read it.
It's unclear what version of the proposal the president is talking about. U.S. officials acknowledge there have been some changes in light of these discussions. Now, the president's eldest son suggests his father is not ruling out ending negotiations altogether.
Is your hunch that President Trump is going to walk away?
I think he may. What's good about my father and what's unique about my father is you don't know what he's going to do. The fact that he's not predictable, he's not following the playbook of every clown who's, again, been a bureaucrat for decades, you don't know.
Trump Jr. adds the recent corruption scandal in Ukraine, which forced one of Zelensky's top negotiators to step down from office, could complicate the peace talks. Nate and Carly.
Okay, Madeline Rivera live for us in Washington. Maddie, thank you. Let's bring in the U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Matt Whitaker. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. We just heard from a lot of key players there, most notably, of course, President Trump, and some interesting comments from his son, Donald Trump Jr., as Ukrainian officials toggle back and forth between the United States and Europe. Where do you think peace negotiations stand right now?
Well, good morning, Carly. It's good to be with you. I just got back from Doha myself at the same conference that Don Jr. was at, and obviously the war is top of mind for many. President Trump has brought this negotiation closer than we have ever been, and I keep saying that because we keep making progress and we keep having our envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, go back and forth between the sides, hammering out a multi-point, kind of complicated peace deal. But I mean, all of the what you just played from over the weekend is good news. I think we're making significant progress. At the same time, it's going to take both sides, and President Trump understands how to put leverage on both the Russians and the Ukrainians to get them to hammer out this deal, to keep making progress. And I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful. But at the same time, Don Jr.'s right. There may get to a point where if President Trump determines there's not a deal to be had, that he does step away from it. And that certainly, would be his nature. He does like having strategic ambiguity to be able to insert where he needs to insert. And he is expecting both sides to make progress. This war needs to end. He has been very clear about that. And the killing needs to stop.
Yeah, well, overnight, there was a fresh drone strike that Russia launched on Ukraine. And Over the weekend, NATO fighter jets were scrambled and air defense systems were put on alert because Russia launched one of its largest drone strikes on Ukraine since the war began. 653 drones and 51 missiles. But this is after Vladimir Putin just met with Steve Witkoff, and that meeting was said to be successful. So why now?
Well, obviously, Russia believes that they have some leverage with their ability to put mass over the border. NATO responded to protect our territory. We have said, and we will continue to say, we're going to protect every single inch of NATO territory. And we have our eastern flank that is well protected, that we have really invested a lot of time, effort, and defenses in so that make sure that our citizens are safe. But at the same time, this is why I go back to what I said earlier. President Trump's wants this killing to end, knows this killing needs to end, and we are so close right now. We need to keep rolling up our sleeves and push to the finish to end this bloodbath that continues to be here in Europe.
Mr. Ambassador, there are those who do not think the United States should be involved with the war in Ukraine. They tune out when it's brought up. Why does U.S. involvement in wrapping up this war matter? Why should it matter to the American people?
Well, the simple truth is we are the only world superpower, and we are the only ones, and especially President Trump is the only one, that can bring both sides to the table and work with them to mediate a resolution. There is no one else that can do it. If the United States walks away, if President Trump walks away, the likelihood of peace dramatically diminishes. And so, President Trump knows that, and obviously he's in a perfect position to resolve this, but it's going to take both sides. And if he determines that both sides are not serious about peace, he'll have to take that into his calculation. But ultimately, the United States is the peacemaker here. President Trump is the peacemaker in chief. And, we are not spending any more money on the war in Ukraine. We are selling weapons that are to our European and Canadian allies that are buying them and supplying them to Ukraine or keeping them for themselves. But ultimately, the United States is no longer just shipping unlimited money and material to Ukraine in hopes that they can defend themselves. We are serious. We're clear-eyed. We know that peace is the only solution to this dispute and this war. And so President Trump is the only one, as the peacemaker in chief, to be able to bring both sides to end this.
U.S. Ambassador to NATO Matt Whitaker, we thank you so much for joining us. We thank you for your time, as always. We appreciate it.
There you have it, you guys. So that is the latest coming out on that. As we're hearing, there was a massive attack that took place, and we're hearing that right now. Let me know your thoughts. Should we be sending over more funds, more support to Ukraine? If you think yes, put yes. If you think no, put no. Let me know your thoughts. Zelensky saying that Ukraine is just the beginning, that if they defeat Ukraine, they're going to move on to the next country, which could be an assortment of different NATO allies. There's threats going out to the United States. Or do you think, no, we should not be supporting them? If we do, then it's just going to extend out this war. We're also hearing that China is just pouring more funds into Russia as well. Let me know your thoughts, yes or no. And also, if you haven't done so yet, take a second, hit the like button. And also, speaking of funds, as we enter into 2026, we're hearing that things could get a little bit dicey here with the tariffs. We're waiting to see if there's going to be $2,000 tariff checks coming out. If you think there should be, drop a 2,000 in the comments. Now, regardless, I'm trying to help people make the most of their money here. Tons of different savings links down below as well. So right now is the time to look into car insurance. I got a link for you to look up the top 5 best car insurances and an assortment of other things to help you save money. The best high yield interest savings accounts. I got a bunch of stuff to help out people as well. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of the articles that have been coming out on what's going on with Russia so you can see the latest. Let's take a look at this one here about the drone attacks. As we're hearing that there has been substantial call that went well with Zelensky. However, at the same time, there are drone attacks taking place, and we're hearing Chernobyl unable to stop the radiation leak after the drone strike that had unfolded before. So there are concerns about that. We're going to look at that here in just a second, but let's take a look at this article here. Russia launched a massive missile and drone attack on Ukraine overnight into Saturday, as President Volodymyr Zelensky said that he had a substantive phone call with the U.S. officials aimed at ending a nearly 4-year war. Ukraine and the U.S. officials, excuse me here. Ukrainian and U.S. officials noted any real progress toward any agreement ultimately would depend on Russia's readiness to show serious commitment to long-term peace. So they're saying that this lies with Vladimir Putin and Russia. However, we're hearing that they are not necessarily on board. Ukraine is determined to keep working in good faith with the American side to genuinely achieve peace, Zelensky wrote on social media. It comes after Russia launched 653 drones and 51 missiles in its attack on Ukraine, triggering aid raid alerts across the country overnight into Saturday, Ukraine's Air Force had said. Ukrainian forces shot down and neutralized 585 drones and 30 missiles, the Air Force said, adding that 29 locations were struck. At least 8 people were wounded in the attacks, Ukraine's Minister of Internal Affairs, Ihor Klimenko, said. Russia conducted a massive missile drone attack on power stations and other energy infrastructure in several regions. Ukraine's national energy operator, Ukrenigro, said on Instagram. Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant temporarily lost all off-site power overnight, the International Atomic Energy Agency said. The plant is in an area that has been under Russian control since early in Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. It is not in service, but needs reliable power to cool its 6 shutdown reactors and spend fuel in order to avoid any catastrophic nuclear incidents. So again, major concerns about nuclear fallout. And we're going to be looking here at the updates on Chernobyl as well. Wow, and here you can see some images from those attacks. Zelensky condemns meaningless strikes. The Ukrainian president condemned the strikes as meaningless from a military point of view. He said energy facilities were the main target, but a drone strike had burned down a train station in the city of Fastiv in the Kiev region. The Russians' goal is to hurt millions of Ukrainians that they have sunk so low that they are launching missiles at peaceful cities on St. Nicholas Day, he said, and I actually heard some people say on here that it was peaceful locations that were being hit in the comments. That is why additional pressure is needed. Sanctions must work, and so must our air defense, which means we must continue to support those who defend our lives. Ukraine strikes an oil refinery. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry said that its air defenses had shot down 116 Ukrainian drones over Russian territory overnight. The general staff of the Ukrainian armed forces said Ukrainian forces had struck Russia's Razan oil refinery, while Russian Telegram news channel Astra shared footage appearing to show a fire breaking out and plumes of smoke rising above the refinery. Over the last few months, Ukraine has used long-range drones to target Russian refineries in an attempt to deprive Moscow of the oil export revenue that it needs to continue the war. Kiev and its Western allies say that Russia is trying to cripple Ukraine's power grid and deny civilians access to heat, light, and running water in the winter, which Ukrainian officials call weaponizing the cold. And we've heard that this is what they've been doing throughout this war, is trying to take away their ability to stay warm during the winter months. That is one of the tactics that Russia has been using, we're hearing, and they are planning to do that again. So, man, pretty intense. Now, meanwhile, take a look at this. We're also hearing that Chernobyl is unable to stop the radiation leak after Russian drone strike. A UN watchdog warns the strike pierced the power plant's outer shell, but radiation levels have not increased in the area, though. And you can see where it struck that upper part. The protective shield at the Chernobyl power plant can no longer contain radioactive material due to damage caused by a drone strike earlier this year, the UN's nuclear watchdog had warned. So this report coming out today, and they are now verifying that the attack that took place earlier this year, they are not able to conceal it. In February, the plant was damaged by a drone armed with a warhead, which pierced the outer shell, helping prevent radiation leaks from Chernobyl's reactor number 4. Ukraine said Russia was behind the attack, but the Kremlin denied responsibility. Rafael Grossi, the director of International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA, said an inspection last week found that the structure had lost its primary safety functions, including the confinement capabilities. No permanent damage has been done to the load-bearing structure or monitoring systems. Although repairs have been carried out, the site requires a comprehensive restoration in order to prevent further degradation and ensure long-term nuclear safety, Mr. Grossi has said. Now, in February, the drone punched a hole in the structure of the outer shell and briefly started to fire around the reactor, which was destroyed in 1986 when the plant exploded and sent radiation across Europe. It remains the world's worst nuclear accident and ended the lives of 31 people. Now, radiation levels at the shuttered plant in Kiev region have not increased. The IAEA said that as the drone strike did not breach the plant's inner containment shell, the shield was built in 2016 to prevent the release of radioactive material into the atmosphere due to the Chernobyl disaster. The plant's last working reactor was closed in 2000, and here you can see images. On the left here is the exterior where it broke through, and then you can see the interior where it crashed into the structure. In the first weeks of its February 2022 invasion, Russian forces occupied the plant and the surrounding area, which lies around 130 kilometers north of Kiev, before withdrawing from northern Ukraine in late March. Russian forces have been accused by Ukraine and its European allies of playing fast and loose around key nuclear sites, including both Chernobyl and Zaporizhzhia, which is the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. It has been occupied by Russia since 2022. Now, speaking on Saturday at the Reagan National Defense Forum, Donald Trump's ongoing Ukraine envoy, Keith Kellogg, said efforts to end the war depended on the two outstanding issues of the Donbass and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The Zaporizhzhia plant, which is not in service, needs reliable power to cool its 6 shutdown reactors and spent fuel to avoid any catastrophic nuclear incident, they said. So they are concerned about that other one as well. And let me know your thoughts. Do you think we're going to be able to achieve peace? Now, right now we have the special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and also Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who actually helped broker the peace deal for the Abraham Accords and also got peace in the Middle East right now with Israel and those proxy groups from Iran with all of those attacks that were taking place, and actually got that hostage deal agreement. And Jared Kushner actually was able to help broker that, they said, because he is also of Jewish descent. So he's been able to broker peace in the Middle East several times, and they're saying that Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff and several others now are also trying to broker peace over in Russia and Ukraine. Do you think they're going to be able to pull it off? If you think so, put peace in the comments. Now, if you think no, Putin doesn't want peace and there's just going to be more war, put war in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. Can Donald Trump's team of Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, and others be able to pull off and broker these peace deal agreements? Let me know your thoughts. But right now we're hearing that things have intensified roughly in the last 48 hours. Over the weekend, we're hearing that there have been major attacks. There are peace talks that are underway, yet at the same time, we are seeing that it does not look like Vladimir Putin is showing any signs of coming to the negotiating table. We're going to need some serious changes here in order to get this on track. Now, we're going to see, because Donald Trump is saying that he is the president of peace, that he is going to put an end to the wars. I think he said that he's put a stop to like 7 or 8 wars so far. And he thought that this one was going to be very quick, but he says that he's getting very frustrated with Vladimir Putin because the same day he sits with him and says, we're going to work out a deal, later on that day, he launches the largest attack so far in the war. So we're going to see. I will keep you up to date. I'm seeing war pouring into the comments. I'm seeing some people say they believe that peace is around the corner. We will see. I will keep you up to date. And in addition to that, as I mentioned, $2,000 tariff checks. We actually got an update today on tariff funds being distributed. Trump doubling down, saying that we're going to actually distribute $12 billion to farmers. $2,000 checks are going to be coming out next year. We're still waiting to hear what the courts have to say about this, if it's legal for the president to issue these tariffs and declare a national state of emergency with the economy and trade imbalance. We're yet to see what's going to unfold with that. As soon as it comes out, I will let you know. Also, if you missed it, like I said earlier today, a 7.6 magnitude earthquake struck Japan. 48 hours prior, we heard that there was a 7.0 that hit Alaska, and there is also an underwater volcano that is emerging in the ocean off the coast of Oregon. So, man, just a lot taking place right now. And as it unfolds, I'll be sure to report it here on the channel so you know the latest and you can stay up to date on everything. Now, if you appreciate that, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to stay up to date, share this out, and like I said, articles along with other resources to help you save some funds as we enter into 2026 down in the description. They're totally free. Now's the time, as we're in December going into the new year, to make sure you got your financial house in order. Check those car insurances, check if you got the best checking accounts, savings accounts, if you got the best life insurance, home insurance. They're usually making a lot of money banking on the fact that you're not going to switch. Now would be a good time to do so. But that is the latest, you guys. I'll keep you up to date as more comes out. Thank you so much for joining me. God bless. Take care. Oh, speaking of God bless, if you're a praying individual, new channel coming out here very soon. Holy Bible KJV, the same voice that brings you the news, also going to bring you the Bible, audio Bible coming on YouTube very soon. I'll put a link in the description down below for you. That is the latest, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care. God bless. Catch you in the next one. This is Steve.